Good morning. This is John Cogan. I'm the CEO of Proformative, the online community for corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related professionals. First, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar entitled Driving Productivity in Finance, Aligning People, Process, and Technology in the Cloud. Cloud computing has opened the door to companies of all sizes to improve efficiencies and make better decisions by driving the right data to the right people at the right time. How are companies effectively leveraging the cloud to become best in class in terms of finance, accounting, and related operational areas, and unlocking the true value of the enterprise? Today you'll discover how cloud technology facilitates the proper alignment of people and process across the enterprise. Now, a few items before we get into today's presentation. Number one, I'd like to thank Adaptive Planning and NetSuite for helping us make this event possible. Everything we do at Proformative is free to our users, and it's due to the wonderful support of companies like NetSuite and Adaptive Planning that today's webinar is brought to you at no cost. Now, quick word about Proformative to those who are new to our platform. Proformative is the largest and fastest growing online resource for senior level corporate finance, treasury, accounting, and related professionals. We reach more than 600,000 of those folks on a monthly basis, and they simply come to Proformative.com or to our events to learn from peers and subject matter experts in a completely noise-free, ad-free environment. There's no advertising at all on the site. There's no self-promotion. It's a wonderful resource for learning how to do things better in your field of endeavor. Please check it out at Proformative.com if you haven't already. A couple notes about this morning's event. First off, today's presentation has already been posted at Proformative.com/resources. So if you want a copy, you can grab that right now or anytime. And we will be sending out an email within 24 hours of this event. It will have a link to the soft copy, and it will have a link to the video of this webinar. Many folks are here today for CPE credits. We have 3 polling questions we'll be asking today. If you're here for CPE credit, you'll have to answer those questions. But they are statistical in nature, and even if you're not here for CPE credit, we'd love to see what your take is on these questions. So please take 30 seconds and take a quick peek at those questions when they pop up on your screen, and they'll come in the breaks between today's speaker presentations. Next up, please ask questions anytime today. There's a question area on your GoToWebinar control panel. Feel free to ask questions at any point in today's presentation. It won't interrupt anything, and we will do our best to get to your questions at the end of today's webinar. So we have 2 roughly 20-minute presentation decks that we'll be running through with today's 2 wonderful speakers, and then we'll get to the Q&A at the end. So at any time, any questions, feel free. Finally, at the end of today's webinar, you'll be asked to take a short survey regarding how the webinar went, and we'd love your feedback. It takes all of 60 seconds, and it's very quick and easy, and it allows us to figure out how to make sure we're always improving over here. Also, if you'd like to be connected directly with either of today's 2 speakers, we make it very easy to do that. It's a click of a mouse, and we're happy to broker that introduction. We want to cover a number of topics today, but essentially they center on cloud technology and how finance, accounting, and related professionals can utilize these technologies in their companies. And here to start us off this morning is Tom Kelly. Tom is Managing Director at T. Edward, Inc., and as the Managing Director of T. Edward, Inc., Tom serves as the strategic partner and CFO/CIO for several unique companies. Portfolio companies include Cardia Health Systems and OnPoint Medical Diagnostics, both organizations that were created by commercializing software IP from leading healthcare institutions. Also, Triprima, Inc., who offers computing infrastructure and storage as a service delivered in a private cloud computing configuration, and FeedLogic Corporation, a leader in intelligent feeding systems and informatics for livestock. Tom has held senior management positions with large publicly held companies like PepsiCo and Deluxe Corporation, as well as small cap and privately held entities such as eBenX and PeopleNet Communications. He is a CPA with an MBA in finance, and he's going to kick us off this morning. Tom, welcome, and please take it away.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. So let's get into this, and let's talk about how the cloud transforms the role of the CFO. So first, we've had the abacus. I used this when I started my career. Give you an idea how old I am. And we've all heard about this, the bean counter, right? And everybody, you go to your meeting and people call you the bean counter. And I believe that's a picture of John in his early days in accounting. I'm not sure, but
I've got some new outfits since then, but thanks, Tom.
Excellent, excellent. And then, leveraging old technology, and I use the screen as an example because it's always been interesting to me that management or your colleagues have always wanted you to be able to act, respond, reply, be very nimble in terms of providing information, yet the technology that you have to use, that old technology that's not integrated, whatever, is not truly accessible, ubiquitously, let's say, wherever you are, it's almost impossible to meet that need or live up to that expectation. So leveraging cloud technology. And for those of you who don't know who this is actually Ed Harris, who played the gentleman by the name of Gene Kranz, who was the person in charge of mission control at NASA during the Apollo missions. And the reason I want to bring that up is for this. What you can do, and what I've been able to do with cloud applications, is almost act like NASA. And what the CFO can end up doing is you migrate from a person that is providing this historical backward-looking information, meaning we've closed the books, it's 3 weeks later, or shorter or longer depending on your situation, and people are off, they're on the next greatest thing. You go into your meetings, everybody's complaining about whose data is right, but if you can use a cloud-based package that's integrated, on all points, from beginning to end, from order to cash, if you will, you literally almost have the capabilities of NASA's mission control. You know what people are doing, you know how they're doing it, you know when they're doing it, in many cases you know why they're doing it. So it's all about the information. And when you do go to the cloud, your information is real time. That information is accessible 24/7, 365. And with the type of devices that we have today, it's almost accessible across a whole multitude of devices, tablets, smartphones, laptops, notebooks, you name it. And it's really, that's what the information is all about. And maybe to quote President Clinton, information is. In other words, that's what it is all about. And when he says it all depends on what you define as is, well, if you have the information, if you know that information is accurate, everybody's on one set of information so you don't have disparate systems, and that information is wholly accessible regardless of where you are in the world for that matter, that's what it's all about from a CFO, from a finance standpoint. If you can accomplish that, you will be able to be world-class at what you do, how you support your organization, and most importantly, helping your organization drive to make the right decisions about what they need to do every year, every month, every week, every day, almost every minute, if it's to that degree that you need to be at. So just to talk about my experience and kind of where I've come from is I started using a lot of cloud applications early on, maybe they call it ASP, application service providers, which truly is not what the cloud is today. But the first time I did this, meaning taking a company entirely to the cloud, was back in 2007. What was interesting to me is the company was an organization called Second One Exercise Equipment. It had some challenges, to say the least. When I embarked on this, I just had this theory, and I wanted to prove it, that you could bring a company to the cloud. And I thought that that would probably take me 18 to 24 months. So the team, believe it or not, we were able to migrate to the cloud, and I mean everything. No servers. We buried a server in the backyard. We got rid of the last one. We did it in 9 months. And when we did it, we thought at first, oh my gosh, this is going to be impossible. There's so much change going on. What was very interesting to us is a lot of the folks in the organization were like, why did we wait so long to do this? This is so much easier. It's more intuitive. So the applications that we chose and how we did it, how we put them together, it worked quite well for the organization. And so it was proven, did it in less than a year. maybe it was going to be a one-time thing, not repeatable, but that wasn't the case. So one of the things that John mentioned is a lot of the companies that I work with, they have offerings that come out of some world-class healthcare institutions. And what we ended up doing is there was a portfolio of companies, and we put every single one of those companies in the cloud. But what was interesting about this experience is these companies were, in essence, startup type companies, right? So you're starting from scratch. You have a technology, you have an idea, whatever it is. Getting those organizations to the cloud was much quicker. We're talking about a couple months, and we're talking about several different applications. And what was interesting about this is you didn't have the legacy of, having an on-premise system, having used it in the past, or several legacy systems. You could actually start from scratch and logically put together what's the right type of strategy to go into the cloud step by step by step. And what was interesting is how quickly we were able to do this across many different companies. This is just a handful of them that you see here right now, but there are many more. So the thing I'm trying to perfect for everybody here is I'm not just trying to tout the cloud just because it's cool and it's neat or whatever. It's effective, it's efficient, and the adoption of the cloud is obviously increasing significantly. But for finance folks out there, it's going to be very important for you to embrace this cloud or to influence those decision makers in your organization to really give the cloud serious thought about how you want to run your organization. Because you can have the best strategy, you can have the best ideas, but unless you have the technology or the infrastructure, whatever you want to term it, to carry that message out, to make it actionable for people so they can digest it and act upon it, it's going to be dead in the water. So if my second time wasn't enough, I've done this over 25 times now. And what's interesting to me is in many cases when we do this with organizations, then they find out that you don't necessarily have to have a finance staff on site. And so what we're currently doing right now is we manage 9 different companies as CFO, CIO, and one of my clients calls us EIEIO as an example because what we're able to do is we have insight into the company every day. So everything's digitized. We don't have to worry about not having access to a particular document because it's all scanned and put into a file cabinet and fully accessible. So we have the opportunity to look at that. We leverage other certain technologies so that we can interact with people on a daily basis, on a project basis. And what's interesting about this is if we did not have the cloud, myself and my colleagues in my organization, we could not be as effective as we are. And I would argue we provide very good information because we holistically understand what's going on with the organization. And as you saw from the earlier slides, it's accessible pretty much anywhere, any time of the day, year, or whatever, anywhere you are in the world. It's interesting. I thought I'd work less with my own company. I think I'm working twice as hard, but it's actually fun because it's very dynamic and very insightful in terms of what information you can get leveraging various cloud applications. So kind of schematically, let's think about this. You want to organize your financial and operational data around the processes of your organization, right? So if we're thinking about finance and how we want to do this, from a FP&A standpoint, the budget, how we're going to do this, the revenue planning, workforce planning, all of this other information, you're not going to be that effective if you're doing that in a vacuum, if you're sending out Excel spreadsheets. You really need to leverage the technologies that are out there, workflow, collaboration. That's a big deal because if you can do that, your accuracy of what you're planning is going to be significantly improved. When we think about the controller and close management, and I alluded to the fact before that it could take you up to 3 weeks, and I've seen some companies that it takes 4 or 5 weeks, so you're already into the next month. Some of these situations with the cloud, if you do it right, you integrate right, you holistically have things connected end to end, you can close the books in days or day in some cases, depending upon the complexity of your organization. Thinking about the CFO, you want to look at the information, you want to understand what the analytics are, but you want to have that information almost pop up to you, dashboard, if you will. And we've heard, plenty of companies out there do the dashboard, but I'll tell you this, if you have to create something ad hoc, if you have to do things off the cuff, it's much less inefficient. If you can have the key performance indicators available to your CFO, or for that matter, anybody running a particular division or department within your company, and have it available at their fingertips real time, it's pretty profound, and you can be much more of a proactive organization than reactive. And when you think about the chief accounting officer and disclosure, eggerization of things, the process by which you put the structure in place, you'd be very surprised at how it mirrors what the requirements are for certain types of reporting requirements, SEC, GAAP, you name it. So it almost, I don't want to say it's foolproof, but if you do it right, it's honestly going to keep you on track and not let you move away. And then obviously, the CEO, the CXOs of the company, the strategy, the strategic planning, when you come up with that strategic plan and you can embed it within some type of a technology, and that technology is going to give you feedback constantly and is going to continually reinforce what your strategic directions and objectives are as a company and how you're doing against those things, now you've got your organization connected from the 10,000-foot level all the way down to ground zero. So the folks on the front line, they have their roles and responsibilities. They know what they need to do, and those things tie completely to that overall strategic goal, whatever it may be for your company. So the challenge, and I've been saying this, is to create an integrated view of the organization. And in any case, the financial management, the ERP, whatever you want to call it, that has to be at the focal point of what you're going to do from a strategy, cloud-based. Because if you don't have that holistic view of the organization, understanding the issues, what's going on within the overall business, you're not going to have that insight. The other in real time, when you have situations where you've got a lot of legacy systems, you've got sales that has their own system, finance that has their own, manufacturing operations, you'll come into the meeting, and I've experienced this many times in my career, you're going to complain and argue about whose information is right, as opposed to reacting to what the information says and making sound-based business decisions. So what you really have to do is you have to transform that data mindset in the past. And so the disparate systems, people coming in with their own information, you really have to put a bullet in that and focus on some applications that are going to allow you to bring everything together. And the one thing I want to talk about this, yes, potentially you could do it with on-premise, but I will tell you the cost that's involved, the resources that are involved are significantly higher, and this is my personal experience. I know there's a lot of commentary on both sides of the fence out there, but in my experience, in the 25-plus times that I have done this, I have not been in a situation yet where on-premise was less costly for an organization. So the ROI from a cloud standpoint has always outweighed that of the on-premise ROI. So let's talk about the business intelligence maturity level and where's your organization today. So we look at the baseline, right? So you have your annual forecast and your plan. It's probably spreadsheet driven. The analysis is spreadsheet driven, and it's mostly manual, right? You ferret around the spreadsheets. People look at them. They provide information back. God knows if it's accurate and the formulas all work right. But basically, that's where many companies are today. And looking at from a functional standpoint, some processes are automated. The annual plan, you put it together, you have quarterly updates, operational reporting on departmental data, so you're getting a little bit more insight on a department-by-department basis. And there's a mix of manual and automated report assembly, right? So you may have some reports that are kicking out of the system and they're canned, but you're probably putting stuff into Excel, massaging it, spinning it around, and then sending that out to the organization. So again, not as efficient as it needs to be. From an emerging standpoint, we've got departmental process automation now, right? So certain organizations are maybe using certain processes, and they've automated them. They have a monthly financial planning and analysis process, which is probably good practice. Every month you're reviewing the information, you're reporting the results, forecast the plan, etc. You have initial corporate view in place. Data is from a core system that is integrated, again, not necessarily cloud, but you're looking at probably more of the on-premise thing, and you've put together some KPIs from a top level from an organizational standpoint. But then we talk about industry leading. Automation is complete from beginning to end, order to cash, if you will. It's timely and it's accurate. It's real time. We're talking about the cloud here. The corporate view is in place, and all the systems are integrated, or you have an integrated cloud platform. The enterprise-wide KPIs and drivers go from top to bottom. So like I was saying before, holistically our goal as an organization may be achieving a certain level of EBITDA, but we need to boil it all the way down to the folks on the manufacturing floor and what are the key metrics that they need to be focusing on such that they're doing the right thing and maximizing manufacturing, to the sales group so that they know what they're focusing on. And we're also looking at this holistically across the board so the measurements are not competing, right? So if we want manufacturing to have the lowest cost per unit produced, they're not just blowing the doors off production because the demand from sales isn't quite there and we're stocking up inventory. So the idea here is to manage holistically. And once you do that, and once you have that information in place, now you can be proactive as an organization. You can manage the business, more proactively than reactively. So finance really is the natural hub for analytics. Finance will typically drive the budgets and the measurement of results. Scorekeeper, for lack of a better term. Finance is going to certify the accuracy, right? You look at the end finance will own the budget across departments. But I would tell you this, in my humble opinion, if you look at the bottom, here we've got marketing, sales, operations, and finance. But if you look at the bottom, we've got IT supporting all of these. It is my belief and in my humble opinion that finance should own IT. And what I mean by that is more and more today, if you are not, working with the IT department, or if you don't have the IT department reporting to you, I do believe you won't be successful in carrying off this holistic view, because what's going to be most important is ensuring that across the board, all functions and all processes are being able to benefit from a holistic technology, but you also want to make sure that you've embraced the IT group to make sure that we're in sync and we're providing the tools and the capabilities to the organization such that they can get out of it what they need to get out of it. So frankly, it's important with an organization in my mind that IT really should be owned by finance. I know my IT friends are not going to be happy with me about that comment. So when we talk about the cloud, strategically investing in technology, if you think about the old way, you pay a lot up front. You get a disk and pay $1 million. My experience, it could be 30, 40, 100 times that. And frankly, my experience between implementing some on-premise applications versus cloud is 4x is probably what I would look at in terms of what you're going to be spending for that. It's pretty intensive. And then, once you've done that, you think, okay, I'm done paying this, but now you have to pay an annual maintenance fee in case there's any upgrades. And I can talk at length. I suggest you go to Proformative about what it's like to do upgrades on an on-premise system. But just keep in mind that implementations of some of these on-premise systems can be extremely exorbitant. So when you think about the cloud, and many of you may know this, but it's a new way to pay as you go for what you need, right? So you no longer have the cost of managing the application. You don't have your servers, you don't have your data center room, whatever. You're really depending upon the cloud provider to manage that for you. And you're going to pay a fraction of the perpetual licenses that you've seen from the on-premise days to more of a subscription form based. And what's very interesting to me is when you look at these cloud-based applications, you renew it only if you're satisfied, right? And you may not, you may say to me, well, wait a minute, we've got all this data in this cloud system, and how are we going to move to another one? One of the other experiences I've had is going from on-premise to on-premise is not exactly the easiest thing to do. Going from on-premise to cloud is a little bit easier. But what I have found with some of my clients is when we go from cloud to cloud, it's actually a lot easier because the data is pretty much streamlined. It's in a holistic format. It's got to adhere to certain requirements because it's going to be web-based. So what I would tell you, and this is my experience, and that's what I'm speaking about here, I have found when you're moving from a cloud application to a cloud application, that migration is a lot easier, a lot quicker than what you may have experienced in the past with on-premise type systems. So in conclusion, there's obviously significant challenges facing organizations and the CFO team. There's, it's a global economy now, turbulence, hyper-competition, and more. And hyper-competition could be from, the individual sitting at their home to the 5,000 employee company. I think the most urgent challenge for finance is streamlining the processes and aligning the organization. So, it's one thing to have the strategy, but believe me, if you do not have the tools to carry that off, it'll be dead in the water and be a wonderful, binder that's going to sit on your shelf. Or I guess in my case, I should say a wonderful digital document that's going to sit in your inbox or sit in your hard drive. So business process improvement, unification of business systems, and having better business intelligence via the cloud and the tools that the cloud provides really, in my experience, helps align that organization, makes the organization proactive, and kind of a visual. It really does allow companies to be in mission control like status. You can, if the salesperson calls you up and they don't have access to the information, you can bring it up right away. You can give them information right then and there what's going on. So it's pretty impressive what's been going on in this area. And with that, I will turn it back to John.
Thanks, Tom. And actually, I think your mission control analogy also extends to providing control out to those users. So one thing that I found running multiple companies in the cloud is that it's a lot easier to extend access to all of this information out to the sales team and whomever when you're running cloud apps. But we'll probably get into that a little bit more during Q&A. And for now, what I'd love to do is jump into the first polling question. So I'm going to ask that right now. And remember, this is the first of 3 polling questions. If you're here for CPE credit, you do need to answer this. If you're not here for CPE credit, we'd love you to take 20 seconds and answer it anyway. Very straightforward question, and we'll leave this out for a few moments. A quick reminder for those who joined us late, the soft copy of today's presentation is already posted out on proformative.com/resources. It's top item there, and we'll also send out an email with a link to today's presentation soft copy and a link to the video of today's webinar. So that will be jetting out to you within the next 24 hours. Also encourage folks to ask questions at any time. We actually already have a few questions queued up. We have one more short presentation, and then we're going to go ahead and hop into this Q&A. All right, and we will actually revisit these polling questions when we get to the Q&A, so you'll get to see how everyone is answering. And at that, I'm going to go ahead and close it down. We're going to jump into our next presentation, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you Bill Aiken, CEO of Abacus Group. Bill has, speaking of Abacus, Bill has extensive experience in helping companies of all sizes achieve their growth goals. He's founder and CEO of Abacus Group, which is a boutique consulting firm focused on corporate performance management. Bill gained significant business operations experience working for 10 years at PepsiCo and Frito-Lay with their finance, sales, and marketing organizations. When Bill left PepsiCo to launch Abacus Group, he was the finance director for PepsiCo's $7 billion grocery channel. Prior to PepsiCo, Bill worked for a small B2B company in Dallas, for Nortel in Richardson, Texas, as well as the major consulting firm Anderson Consulting in Washington, D.C. Bill has a bachelor's in economics and an MBA with a concentration in finance. And Bill, welcome today, and please take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, John. Okay, so I'm going to be talking to you specifically about budgeting, planning, and forecasting in the cloud. This is the area of the Finance Hub that my organization focuses on for helping our clients. And this will fit extremely nicely with what John had talked through earlier, and Tom as well. Here's my agenda for today. So I'm going to just give you a few brief introductory slides that aren't cloud specific per se, but we'll talk through the cloud application of the first couple of slides, and then touch on process, people, technology, in terms of how the cloud can be leveraged to make you more efficient and more effective at your finance role. Okay, so first off here, the finance organization vision. Again, this is not cloud specific, but in leveraging the cloud, you can move from stage number 1, which is transaction management, to stage number 4, the integrated functional excellence, more quickly, more easily, and more affordably, as Tom alluded to earlier in terms of the cost. Let's focus on stage 1 first, the transaction management. In this stage, finance is primarily concerned with being dominated by complex systems and a lot of just transactional level detail. Finance may be involved in the annual budgeting process and really focused on financial accounting at this point. As they move forward to stage 2, controlling the business, finance becomes a little bit more focused on process and focused on risk minimization and improving reporting. Then a lot of companies are moving towards stage 3, which is increasing planning and analysis as part of the finance function. Here, finance begins to get more involved in decision support and provide sound financial analysis. And then taking it all the way to Bright, as finance becomes more and more part of that mission control aspect that Tom referred to. Finance is crucial. It's at the center. It's at the hub of all operating and strategic decisions. So obviously the goal is here to migrate from stage 1 to stage 4. That takes time, takes effort. We'll talk through some elements of this, but the cloud enables a more rapid movement from stage 1 to stage 4. Okay, and then just some metrics from Hockett Group benchmarking analysis of world-class finance organizations. So these would be the finance organizations that have made it to stage 4. If we look and say, okay, what percentage of their people, their finance people, so their FTEs, are focused in financial planning and analysis versus transaction management, it's interesting to see that the world-class organizations have 30% of their FTEs in that particular function as opposed to the peer group, which is only at 24%. And then talking about how finance can be part of this mission control, focused not simply on finance, but also more broadly on operational metrics. The world-class organizations are more than twice as likely to use things like balanced scorecards that have both financial and operational metrics as the peer group. So 2x, 48% versus 24%. Also very interesting to note from a technology perspective, and this isn't necessarily cloud per se, it could be cloud or on-premise, but world-class organizations, 71% of them are leveraging a forecasting planning application purpose-built apart from Excel versus the peer group is only at 14%. And so does all that matter? At the end of the day, you know, the equity market returns would prove out that it does. The world-class organizations have more than 2x the equity market returns of the peer group for those that are public companies anyway. Okay, so let's dive into process specifically here from a budgeting, planning, forecasting perspective. And this first slide speaks to the corporate performance management process that we'll articulate here at Abacus Group as part of our consulting practice. And you can see what's involved here. You know, we start off with long-term strategic planning. You know, that could be a 3 to 5 year time horizon, be fairly general. That will feed the annual operating plan, or some organizations would call that a budget. And then within a given year, you know, the finance organization would be involved in creating forecasts to say what is the latest estimate of how we're going to end up for the year, or maybe has migrated to a rolling forecast that would forecast beyond the fiscal year end in top organizations. They'll report key metrics to track how they are performing back against the annual operating plan, back against the forecast and the strategic plan. We'll analyze results to try to understand any variances. Why are we not performing maybe according to plan, and potentially what needs to be changed in terms of our strategy. The cross-functional review, so involving sales, marketing, operations, I believe is a critical part in this to pull it all together. Again, finance can serve as the hub and the glue in making that happen. And then, of course, we want to tie in rewards, the people aspect to all that to make it a perpetual cycle that will improve over time. Okay, so that's the process that we'll talk about. And then going back to the model that I showed you shortly ago about the finance organizational vision of moving from stage 1 to stage 4, just to remind you of those different stages, and that as we go up from a dimensionality perspective, we have higher degrees of leadership expected from the finance organization and higher degrees of performance management maturity as we move to the right here. And with that, as I move to the next slide, we can see that finance is going to be the hub of the overall corporate performance management process, or budgeting, planning, forecasting process. In that first stage that we talked about, stage number 1, finance is going to be driving the accounting and the budgeting with very little reporting emphasis. Stage number 2, finance is going to start generating more useful reports and information and probably dashboards that are going to be helpful not only for accounting, but also making operating decisions. In stage number 3, finance may begin to produce rolling forecasts, and then also begin to leverage what-if scenarios, so changing key drivers within a model to make faster and better, more informed decisions. And stage number 4, take it all the way to bright. Finance is going to be involved in the planning and reporting process. They're going to be leveraged by their key constituents and other departments for their business insight and really help navigate the business overall, not just be keeping score in terms of what the historical results have been. Okay, next slide here. I'm not going to drain this slide, but understand that there is a variety of approaches for budgeting, planning, forecasting, some of which will be more appropriate in certain situations and other situations. And if we think about migrating out to that integrated finance organization, the bullet point number 4 on the previous slides, most of those organizations are following approach number 3 or approach number 4 here, where they are not only forecasting and planning at a general ledger account level, but they're starting to take it down to a lower level of detail than that. So they've got sales drivers, maybe trying to understand units sold and pricing, translating up to revenue, and they're looking at that by product, by customer. In personnel planning, they may have by person buildup of the details to come up with salary expense and things of that nature. So within those different approaches, some of them are going to require additional technology investment traditionally in order to make it most effective and efficient. And so we'll talk about that in a minute, how the cloud can enable approach number 3 and approach number 4. And you'll see with approach number 4 in particular, we begin to think about embedding finance intelligence and finance staff within operating teams. So that's one of the key enablers there, so that they're right there at the point of decision making, side by side with marketing, side by side with operations, side by side with sales, so that the analytical rigor is being part of the overall decision-making process that finance possesses. Okay, so from a people perspective, one of the big things from a people perspective is to try to drive enterprise-wide collaboration. And it's really important not to have finance functioning in a silo here, but rather to involve a broad array of people in the planning process, in the decision-making process. And that's true from a functional perspective, but it's also true from a leveling perspective. So what we'll tend to find is executives have the ability to obviously set the direction of the company, lay out the strategy, but they may not always possess all the detailed knowledge of what makes the organization tick. And so it's important to also involve lower-level employees that will have visibility into the details that those executives don't. And in terms of involving cross-functional managers from other areas, it's very key to have a clear process articulated. It's very important to have an easy-to-learn tool. So if we're involved with having a huge spreadsheet with a ton of sheets and links and things of that nature, that gets very cumbersome, very difficult for managers cross-functionally to be involved with. So having an easy-to-learn tool is crucial for broader participation. And then we also want to be able to customize the tool to be able to fit their point of view and their perspective way of thinking about the business, while at the same time having some consistency enterprise-wide and some controls around that. And the cloud can definitely help with that. So as we get more people involved in the process, typically we're going to get better insights and therefore be able to achieve our goals in a better fashion. So as we think about the budget manager ownership and responsibility before embarking upon the journey, become an integrated finance organization, a lot of budget targets are dictated down to managers, just top-down perspective, and handed to them on a plate. Managers may have very little flexibility in terms of reprioritizing or reorganizing that budget, and so you're going to get a lot of game playing and a lot of time wasted in pulling together those budget details. After embarking upon this journey to retool, reorganize, what you'll tend to find is organizations are able to have more of a planning versus budgeting mentality, and to have that planning mentality embedded not just within finance but throughout the broader organization, have it tied holistically to the rewards and recognition system, and have the local teams, the distributed teams, be aligned with the company's overall strategic objectives. Okay, and then just a quick data point here from Aberdeen Group in terms of companies that are what we would consider best in class. So this is going to be similar to the stage 4 on the integrated finance organization. They are more than twice as likely to be leveraging enterprise-wide collaboration than the average organization out there. So best-in-class companies are definitely embarking upon enterprise-wide collaboration here. Okay, we'll finally get into technology here. And so as we think about what has traditionally been leveraged from a technology perspective for budgeting, planning, forecasting, or corporate performance management, Excel certainly has penetrated close to 100% of organizations out there. I love Excel. It's a great tool, but it does have issues, as most finance professionals are aware of. It can be very inefficient in terms of being able to roll up numbers at the end of the process. It's very susceptible to having errors within it, so broken links, broken formulas, and it's relatively hard to push out best practices from the center to a field organization. So we have the tradition of large on-premise budgeting, planning, forecasting applications, Oracle Hyperion, SAP, BPC, IBM Cognos being the most well-known names and brands within that space. And they are great applications, but they are expensive, as Tom had alluded to earlier, very expensive. They can be very complex and have very long implementation times, and typically are going to involve IT involvement to get it up and running, as well as to maintain it on an ongoing basis, apart from the finance ownership of the application. So there have been launched, within the last decade, so more recently than the large on-premise versions within the last decade, solutions like adaptive planning, which is a cloud-based solution that was designed specifically to address some of the issues that the on-premise applications have. Adaptive planning, my experience has been, compared to the brands up above, will tend to be about 1/10 of the total cost of ownership of those, and is a great solution that my organization has implemented a number of times, in addition to some of the on-premise tools. So just showing you here some of the advantages for the cloud-based applications versus on-premise. So on-premise model typically is going to require new hardware, new software. You're probably going to have to dedicated IT support. Cloud-based models, you don't have to buy the hardware. You have a subscription-based software subscription, and then the IT department might not even have to get involved at all in terms of implementation or maintenance of the cloud-based solution. The on-premise models, it will certainly take months, if not years, to implement, versus cloud-based solution can be implemented in weeks. Oftentimes, we'll implement adaptive planning in 6-8 weeks time frame, get the model stood up in short order there. The on-premise models can be time-consuming. Upgrades there even can be very costly. You'll have to purchase the upgrades, so don't think that just because you purchase the software one time that you're not going to have to go through that upgrade process in a future year. You'll need that in order to maintain support. So it isn't, in the end, maybe that different than a subscription in terms of having to purchase that on the cloud. On-premise models typically have a little bit slower innovation velocity than the cloud-based models. The cloud vendors have to keep their customers happy through innovation, otherwise they run the risk of the customers canceling the subscription at any time. So there's constant improvement, enhancement. Adaptive planning, as an example, will have 2 major releases a year that everybody will get automatically, and they have as many as 4 releases with innovative new features. The on-premise models are definitely more technical, requires more technical semantics, language understanding, versus the cloud-based models are more business-oriented for business users. The upfront costs, just kind of skipping down here, upfront cost and total cost of ownership when you consider hardware, software, and services is very high for on-premise models versus cloud-based is going to be lower. And because of all that, the on-premise models, there's a lot more risk up front because you're sinking a lot of cash flow, cash outlay up front on the on-premise models, much lower on the cloud-based models where you can try it first, scale it over time, cancel at any time, and the cash flow, cash expenditure will tend to occur over many months or many years, so much lower risk from that perspective. Okay, and then just an objective opinion here from Hurwitz and Associates in terms of the cost of a budgeting, planning, forecasting, or in this case called BP&F application for SaaS versus on-premise when you consider training, implementation, the software itself, and IT infrastructure. The SaaS solution is 1/3 in this case, and this is particularly comparing adaptive planning as the cloud-based or SaaS solution versus Clarity, Longview, and Profits as on-premise. I would tell you the more well-recognized brands of Cognos and Hyperion is going to be more extreme than this, probably more likely 10x total cost on the on-premise versus the SaaS side. So as you look to move towards becoming an integrated finance organization and leveraging a budgeting, planning, forecasting solution in order to get there and to get there more quickly, I highly recommend taking a look at a solution like adaptive planning, cloud-based solution. The solutions like adaptive planning tend to have all these components to them where it'll be a model that can project out your financials, your income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, as well as having supporting models to do things like build up the revenue, personnel planning, so you can move towards making your forecasting process driver-based. And it does, in the end, while it addresses a lot of the issues of Excel, you can hopefully see the interface down here that it's got a look and feel that's similar to Excel. However, it will be served up to you via a web browser. And so with that, I'm going to pass control back to John, but to summarize, as you look towards moving towards becoming an integrated finance organization and becoming that mission control hub that Tom spoke of, look to the cloud to help you make that journey. If you do, you'll certainly, based on all my experience across 100 or so clients, be able to get there quicker. You'll be able to get there more easily, and you're going to get there more affordably than if you're only looking at using and leveraging on-premise solutions. So back to you, John.
Great. Thank you very much, Bill. Appreciate that. Let's go ahead and work our way towards our Q&A session. And before we get there, we're going to go ahead and do our final 2 polling questions here right in a row. Once again, if you're here for CPE credit, you need to answer this. If you're not, then we'd still love you to answer it, just so we can see where everyone sits. And we will revisit all 3 of these polling questions as soon as we're done here. Also remind folks you can ask questions at any time via the question area in your GoToWebinar control panel. It might be closed down, so if you hit the plus next to it, you can just drop your question right in. It gets popped onto our screen here where we can get ready to ask it. I'm also going to remind folks that after today's webinar, when you step off the webinar or when we close it down, you'll be presented with a brief survey. We'd really appreciate your taking the 60 seconds to take that survey. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close out this poll question. We're going to then go ahead and open up the last of the 3. So sorry that we have a couple interruptions here, but in order to provide CPE credits, we need to ask these questions, and we actually do get a lot of very interesting information. And people do tend to enjoy when we share this, and you can see where you sit relative to other folks who are answering these poll questions. So I'll leave this open for another 15 seconds or so. I'll also remind folks that in the post-event survey, if you'd like to directly be connected with either Tom or Bill, that's just a mouse click away. Please feel free to ask us to connect you, and we'll do that via email within a day or 2 after the event and make it nice and easy for you to connect with and follow up with either or both of the gentlemen from this morning's webinar. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close down that last poll. Well, let's revisit these polls real quick, and then we'll get into the questions. So first, we'll share The first poll question that we got earlier, does the finance organization of your company drive technology adoption beyond core accounting? And it's funny, as when I first launched this, the yes answer shot out to a big lead, and I was kind of figuring that's where it would stay, but then towards the end, the no's caught up, and we ended up at 50-50. Tom, does this surprise you at all?
No, actually, I kind of just chuckled when I saw it. That's probably par for the course right now. I think, if you had done this survey 5 years ago, no would probably be more like 75-80%. So progress is being made.
Right. Bill, is this, do you see that same sort of progression with finance owning, quote-unquote, owning IT more frequently these days?
Yeah, and I'd say particularly as it relates to business intelligence and analytic applications, that finance is increasingly being involved in those particular IT areas.
All right, let's pop up the second question here. So the question was, the collaboration between finance, IT, and operations in managing and leveraging my company's data is, well, not much on the non-existent side. I guess that's a good thing. Eliminate acceptable but needs improvement seems to be where the bulk of folks are. Bill, is that what you would expect?
Yeah, I'd say as people move on the journey, they're certainly, for the most part, lacking tools and process to enable them to get all the way to bright. And it is a journey. Nobody ever completely reaches the destination, or rarely does that occur. So I'd say there's always certainly room for improvement, and that would make sense.
All right, and then we're going to hop right to the third question here. So the final question we asked was, which of the following is the highest priority area for the finance and accounting group of your company? Analysis by a greater than 2-to-1 margin. Tom, is this what you think or what you see most of your clients emphasizing?
I probably would have thought the analysis would be higher, in terms of the dashboards. What I see a lot of is, people trying to come up with something that's going to sit in the middle and bring together several different systems. And the next question should be asked is, what are some of the costs? What's the cost range that you've received in trying to do this? If you want to take your legacy systems and try to connect it versus looking at some of the cloud-based options that are out there. So doesn't surprise me, but I wonder what people are thinking in terms of what it's going to cost to try to accomplish that.
Yep. All right. Well, look, let's go ahead and jump into Q&A. We've got a bunch of questions, and we'll see what we've got time to get to this morning, but let's hop on in. So first one to Bill, how do you instill a cloud culture at your company? Many folks are hesitant or even dislike change. The cloud is definitely a change from the old monolithic apps that many of us are used to running. How do you get folks behind this and even in front of the movement?
Yeah, so first off, I think it's important to assess within your organization to make sure, if you're in a finance organization, to make sure that your IT organization is on board with it before you embark on the journey. So there are certainly some companies that just categorically are against the cloud, and it's important to know that as a finance professional from the beginning. Usually it's based on security concerns, and then occasionally for very large organizations, assuming that standards can be employed more easily on premise. But assuming you can get past that, I've tended to find that stressing the ability to more easily collaborate with a distributed team, so that could be across a field organization, a virtual team that's scattered across multiple cities, stressing the benefits related to that are paramount to be able to build that cloud-based culture. And with that, I think Tom alluded to this earlier, trying to move the organization away from paper and do as many things electronically as possible, and stressing the benefits of the information availability in doing that is key. So stress the benefits in the end, and then over time, the culture can develop through the business processes that are required from the technology.
Okay, and one of the items you mentioned in there was subject of another question we had from a viewer today, and I'll address this one to Tom. And this is about security. So, Tom, you're obviously working with a lot of companies out there and have a lot of experience moving folks to the cloud. Security was a super hot button issue maybe 2-3 years ago with the cloud. It seems less so today, but what's your experience been, and do you feel more or less secure with your clients or your company's data in the cloud?
I feel more secure. I'll give you an example of this. So I do quite a bit of work in healthcare, and there's a wonderful act out there called HIPAA, which is, you know, the you want to make sure you're protecting patient data. And what's interesting to me about that is to be compliant with HIPAA, there's certain things that you have to do, and almost every experience I've had, it hasn't been because the cloud application isn't compliant. It's more been the human aspect, right, where people are putting a individual social security number in an email, or they're putting a yellow sticker on their computer with patient data. It's very interesting when you have the HIPAA audit what companies get dinged for, and it's rarely because the infrastructure isn't compliant. The other thing I would say is just security in general. I mean, these cloud companies, they have to do that. It's a given. I mean, granted, in any industry there's going to be fly-by-night operations, but do your work, pick the vendors that are reputable and reliable and have been around for a while. But if they have a data breach, believe me, they're not going to be around for a while, for much longer, because if they do not secure your data and they do not make sure it's behind the walls and encrypted, they're the ones that are going to be going out of business. So just do your homework, but more times than not, I'll tell you, I feel much more comfortable with it. It's in the cloud. And I'm sorry to just go on here, but just when you think about downtime, and a lot of companies talk about this, what I love about the cloud is I'm sure everybody out there has seen the front page articles when Google or Salesforce or whoever has an outage. I mean, it's front page news. So it's great to have the entire world being a watchdog for you, as opposed to your IT person who's got 4 pages on their belt.
Tony, the IT guy, my favorite. Bill, does one have to forsake customization when they adopt the cloud? Cloud applications?
Really, especially planning forecasting models, I'd say from a customization perspective, there's not really a difference between the on-premise solutions and the cloud-based solutions. So they're both involved with configuring the software to your requirements, which would involve defining your particular business rules, logic, formulas, the derived values for the income statement, let's say, or the balance sheet. And so I would say, while there tends to be maybe a little bit less functionality and therefore greater simplicity in the cloud solutions, they're equally customizable relative to the on-premise solutions.
Okay, great. And we're running out of time. I've got one more quick, almost definitional question. I'll pop this out to Tom. What's the difference between SaaS and cloud?
Let's see. I think SaaS was a term that Gartner came up with, and I think the community started calling it cloud. I mean, frankly, I wouldn't get caught up in that. I know there's a lot of stuff out there, but software as a service is what SaaS stands for. And cloud is basically the fact that you're interacting with an application over the internet. I honestly don't think it's worth trying to say what's different. I think the fact is you want to access an application over the internet, and you don't need to have a VPN or manage a server. You're just accessing that application through a device and leveraging the internet backbone. I mean, that's, in essence, I would probably say software as a service is, again, it was a term that Gartner coined, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, that's a good explanation. Thanks, Tom. So tell you what, we have a few questions left over. I will work with Tom and Bill to actually get those posted on Proformative and get those answered, and also other folks on Proformative will be able to weigh in, but then everyone will be able to see it. And I'd like to go through a little bit of quick housekeeping here before we let you go to first the survey and then off onto the rest of your day. So first off, thanks Tom and Bill so much for your time and information today. An awful lot to wedge into 60 minutes, and we appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, John.
If you have any questions whatsoever about CPE credit, you can see Tanya Walsh's contact information down here at the bottom. She'll be happy to help you out. She typically gets CPE certificates out within 24 hours. Thanks again, of course, to NetSuite and Adaptive Planning, two companies steeped in the cloud, and they helped us not only by sponsoring today's event, making it therefore free to all of our users, but also they helped us with today's speakers and just a wonderful resource for information around cloud applications. Finally, a thanks to those of you who joined us today. We know how busy you are and how difficult it is to get an hour away from whatever it is you're doing on a daily basis, but we're happy to have you with us today. We hope to see you again on another event or online at Proformative.com. And with that, we'll let you all go. Have a great day and week, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care, all.